Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron, and I'm going to be with you for the next 15 minutes. I just want to say to begin that it's always so heartening and really elevating to be here in the Citizen Planning School. I think it's a really unique institution that's been built in a pretty quick period of time. And to me, it's really emblematic of where we are in Buffalo in the sense of this really intense and organic interest in place. And in the development of our assets and learning about the process of doing that. So I someday, hope to enroll in the planning school. Today I'm going to be speaking with you about an effort at the community level to gain control of land and to create community-based ways of planning for the future of that land and thinking about land and property and our neighborhoods as places that wealth can be built as we encounter some of the big challenges that we have ahead of us, and in the process of building that wealth and building community control, also thinking about the future of our planet and how neighborhoods in Buffalo can really set a new standard for how we need to be living if this planet's going to survive in the next phase of things. So I'm going to be skipping through some of my slides because I brought about 99 slides and I only have 11 minutes at this point. So Bart, can you give me any guidance on moving to the next slide? Okay. So I always like to start with a little bit of context, even though I'm going to breeze through this. You know, we know that we are first and foremost, we were a mercantile, a port city, as a result of being at the end of the Erie Canal. And because all of those goods and service, many natural resources were coming through our canal port down at what was called Dante Place, or the docks, down near where Marine Drive apartments are. Because of that, we became an industrial powerhouse very early on. We had so much ore and lumber and everything under the sun coming from the west to the east that it was being warehoused really downtown and to the south of downtown. And we also had free electricity, or close to free electricity, in our industrial plants from Niagara Falls early on. So we built this huge industrial economy, attracted people from all over the world, literally, that lived, primarily in ethnic communities, Sicilians, Polish, Germans, African-American people coming up from the south for work, and built this working-class city, industrial city. It was built on auto, steel. Can I just get a quick show of hands of folks who had ancestors working in those plants, whether it was Bethlehem? Okay, so we all know the situation, right? We were all in it together. And at the neighborhood level, that translated into a culture, a way of life that guided us and created power in our neighborhoods and created a sense of community. I think, the tavern was the most important place in a lot of our neighborhoods where a lot of that happened, for better and for worse. If you wanted your union card, or you wanted, to become a Democratic committeeman, you talk to the bartender, right? Or you talk to the folks at the bar, and that's power. That's how we built power. Also, a lot of our communities, again, no matter where you were coming from the South, from Germany, from Poland, churches in Buffalo were a big part of building community power as well. And we also had this great map that we inherited, 1804 Ellicott, 1880s Olmsted. This is, in my mind, and I think Professor Shibley's and a lot of folks' mind, this is really our gold star, our asset that will really take us to the future, especially if we recognize that we have so much waterfront at the western end of it. And we lived in these dense, walkable communities. It's in vogue for us, with good reason, to talk about walkable communities with local independent retail, mixed uses. That's what we had, and we still have in many respects, but that's what Buffalo was built as, with really perfect, ideal geometries, densities, mixed-use streets, commercial right next to dense residential, with centers of community in the midst of them. Again, we have this Olmsted plan overlaid on the Ellicott plan that remains one of the great city plans in the world, especially if you're into sort of romantic pastoral planning, green space right in the middle of our neighborhoods. Very quickly, I know I'm belaboring this, but the next stage was not so pretty in Buffalo. It was eradicating a lot of the economic structures that we built when capital flight happened, when corporations decided that they were going to produce things elsewhere and really destroy our economy. We also did a lot of self-destructive things, like we tore down Humboldt Parkway, which was a place that especially the African American community was really beginning to build wealth and a middle class, and a road was, a highway was built right through the neighborhood in a way that destroyed a lot of that wealth and destroyed a lot of that continuity and walkability and beauty. And so the other thing that happened was we lost all our jobs, right? We lost about 175,000 industrial jobs in a 25-year period, which is just traumatic, right? If anyone who experienced that or had family who experienced that knows that that left a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, a lot of struggle that we're still dealing with. We're still processing. It also left a lot of toxicity. So little by little, we're figuring out how to overcome that. And then we also started to do some really self-destructive things when it came to building monumentalism and brutalism and fake cities in the middle of what were real cities. And we also sprawled. We know all this stuff as citizen planners. I say all this because when we started, I'm going to turn to the work that we actually do at Push now. When we started on the West Side 10, 11 years ago, we were in the midst of a downward spiral, collapsing market that looked a lot like this. This is actually not on the, I didn't put a West Side abandonment picture, and this is a Broadway Fillmore abandonment picture, but it looks a lot the same. Small 19th century Victorian cottages or a little bit later doubles that were abandoned and really creating a cancer for our neighborhood. And the question is, what do we do about that? We know that corporate capital goes wherever it wants to go. There's big banks in New York and Wall Street figuring out the economy at that level. We have very little control of that. We know we need more control over our economy. We need more self-sufficiency, and so the theory that we've come up with at Push is that we need to build our own economy that is community-controlled, that the wealth stays in the community. We create networks of people who care about our community, who are rooted in our community, who know the history of our communities, are aware of things like racism, classism, sexism, and ways that those have distorted our old economies. And so we create these institutions that can launch little businesses, social enterprises, keep them networked, develop their capacity, and we also build institutions that can develop our housing, do our workforce training, and so forth. And the last bullet I'm going to stress is crucial for Push is never losing that sense that we are in a struggle. We're in a struggle that's going to force us to stay mobilized as a community. It's going to force us to confront power and force us to hold people accountable that are in power. So I'm going to skip all these and go to Push. So, this is a snapshot of Push. And I put this picture up first because Tato and Jen represent two aspects of Push. They both relate to leadership development and building those ties that I was talking about. Tato on the left is one of the West Side's greatest gardeners. He grew up on a farm in Puerto Rico. He didn't need any training on farming or gardening. He grew up with it. So he teaches us. This was a piece of land that was abandoned in the back, really no use for it. We were able to purchase it at auction and build a community farm, community garden on it. Jen on the right is the other side of Push. We knocked on our door, talked about neighborhood issues. She immediately demonstrated leadership capacity, leadership knowledge. It has become, over time, she was on our member of Push, a board member of Push, board chair of Push. Now she's a director of organizing and outreach for our community. Right now she's taken 60 people on a bus to Washington, D.C. To do community actions with our allies across the country this weekend. So we have a lot of phrases and sayings that Push about unity and what it means to be working in a community. And one of them is when it comes to turning our neighborhoods around, we're all in this together. The fact that it's about solidarity, it's about moving forward together. And the way that looks concretely is that we're always getting together. We're always getting together to plan the future of our neighborhood, to plan what issues we're going to advocate around. That's Maxine Murphy, who's facilitating this. She's our board chair. Long history of struggle with the civil rights movement, so knows a lot about organizing. And right here, it was a session where we were literally looking at parcel by parcel some of the vacant parcels still left in our community, 25 blocks on the west side, and making a plan to turn them into affordable housing and small businesses. And one thing I always stress is this isn't a one-time thing. You don't do it once a year and do it a few years later. It's an ongoing thing. It has to happen every month. And once you complete a project, you already have to have the next project in mind. So it's not something that's just a charrette and you get up and go. West Side, as with a lot of Buffalo neighborhoods, we have a whole bunch of different typologies of housing or land. So there are different uses. Some houses really do need to be knocked down. Most of them we don't think on the West Side need to be knocked down. We think they need to be affordable housing. But that piece of land can quickly, on the right, that could quickly become a huge asset for a community, either as a farm, as a stormwater management site, or as housing. So community mobilization, what we do is tie our advocacy program, our organizing program, to the real needs of our neighborhood. And an example of that is on the left. We're blowing money outside of the second floor of a vacant house. Why were we doing that? To show that all of us really, unless you're really exceptional, you're heating the outside. Our heat escapes from all of our old houses every day. It costs us a lot of money. It costs the planet a lot of carbon. That's unhealthy for the planet. And one of our crowning issues is the idea that every single house in Buffalo can be a work site. And we're trying to prove that on the west side. We have 25 houses under construction right now on the west side where there are a bunch of people working. And one of the things that you can do, all of us can do, is put insulation on our walls, update our furnaces, cut our bills, help the planet. And so weatherization isn't, for us, it's really not an afterthought. It's a central core of our economic development strategy. And we think every house in Buffalo really needs a good amount of investment. And on the right side is an example of how we're taking that issue to the powers that be, whether it's the utility company, National Fuel, that we've been in a long-term battle with. We've won some big victories. We won a $10 million settlement about a year and a half ago for an overcharge that the company had charged all of us. A lot of that money went back into weatherization across the state. Leadership development, I've already spoken to that. That's about people like Bob, who is really a gardener in the neighborhood as well, also leading our meetings, leading our people forward. This is what our plan looks like from a mapping standpoint. We have about 25 blocks. Push Now controls 110 parcels within those blocks. We have a range of green affordable housing, farms, stormwater management sites. We also, running out of time here, but we really explicitly see this as an anti-gentrification strategy. We are purchasing this property, developing this property to make sure it's affordable for the community that's been struggling in that neighborhood, even as Buffalo gets hot, right? Buffalo can get hot. We may have new wealth coming into the neighborhood, but the folks who've been there struggling are going to stay there because we're organized to make sure that happens. And that's just a look at a groundbreaking. That's a before picture. It's an after picture. There's so many opportunities to do this on the east side of Buffalo, on the south side of Buffalo. It's really a big answer to how we could put people back to work. You could see slides entitled Repairing the Fabric. For us, that, as I said at the beginning, the geometries and densities and the streetscapes of our neighborhoods were really close enough to perfection that we're just trying to use that as our guide, our planning guide. We're not trying to create a whole new architectural design plan for our community. It was already in place, and now it's for us to repair it. People-centered housing, when folks are in our apartments, whether they're in a first-time home buyer house or rental apartments, it's really about keeping people networked, whether it's picnics, barbecues, protests, concerts. And then it all comes back to jobs, right? And that's how we've gotten a lot of traction and built our membership and built the sense that we're really doing something real on the west side. Two of these guys I still see every day, Roberto and Noel. Noel's risen from, really starting as a laborer to being our crew chief for all of our infrastructure work that we're doing across the city now. We have a training program that leads into the work, whether it's the housing construction, the weatherization, the urban agriculture. To look at another one of the farms that we built, I think this is the day that we finished, laying out the plots. I thought we had an after picture. There's an after picture. So one of the beautiful things about the West Side is that people come, whether you are an African American who had family grew up in the South, or Puerto Rican, or Burmese, or Somali, and you often have agricultural knowledge to bring to the community and bring to spaces like this, and that becomes another way to build networks and power. New park we built, another farm, protest around vacant housing. I'll just end here. I know I'm running out of time. By saying that on the sustainability front, we really believe there's a book by Catherine Trumper called Small, Gritty, and Green. She was at MIT Press. And what she said is that neighborhoods like ours, east and west sides of Buffalo, are in some ways better positioned than very prosperous cities like New York and Boston to lead us into the future when it comes to energy, food, and water. And that's because we have vacant land that's interspersed in our dense neighborhoods. So the question is, how do we use all of that land for food, for, if you're aware of our stormwater overflow problem, for making sure our lake remains an asset for us by cleaning it, and in this case for energy. This is a geothermal system that we installed on a very thin vacant lot on Winter Street. This lot heats the house next to it. There's no furnace in the house at 10 Winter Street. It's a NetZero house that produces as much energy as it consumes. And for us, it's about being on the cutting edge of these industries so we can get a piece of them. But it's also about showing that we can live more sustainably with less carbon. That's the NetZero House. I guess I'll end with the happy picture of our youth center, because we do really, it's cliched to say it, but we really think the youth are our future. And it's also the future of our social movement for economic and racial justice on the West Side. We've learned very quickly that youth are at the forefront of that movement now. Just because we have them in our space, they're excited about these issues that I've been talking about today. And in Washington, D.C. right now, 20 of our youth are leading a whole segment of that conference on social movements and moving our cities forward. So thank you, and I'll leave it there. I don't know what happens next part. Okay.